Throughout the Second World War, there were many war crimes committed by armies involved in the conflicts. However, some of the most shocking war crimes focused around the use of human experimentation. When the Allies liberated the concentration camps, they found many horrific stories of sadistic experiments conducted by SS doctors at camps such as Auschwitz. One of the most infamous doctors involved in these was Joseph Mengele, who was nicknamed the Angel of Death. But there was a Japanese unit established that took things to a new level. Unit 731 were a research detachment of the Imperial Japanese Army, who were involved in conducting experiments with regards to chemical and biological warfare, and the experiments they conducted were truly horrific. However, there were some American victims of Unit 731. Today we look at these, and remember to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Initially, Unit 731 began as a Japanese research and public health agency. However, it grew into a disgusting assembly line for weaponized diseases that could have caused chaos over the world. Unit 731 remained one of the most closely guarded secrets of the Second World War, and the truth behind it was kept quiet for a long time. They focused on disturbing experiments on humans, conducted in preparation for germ warfare. The scientists infected deliberately with deadly diseases such as cholera, plague and anthrax around 3,000 enemy soldiers and civilians. These were used as guinea pigs, and even more horrific experiments were carried out. For example, they carried out vivisection without anaesthesia and used pressure chambers to see how much they could push the limits of the human body. One physiologist who worked with the group focused on hypothermia and deliberately froze a prisoner's limbs a number of times, and it was noted when they were hit it sounded like wood. One of the most horrific elements was the human dissections and vivisections carried out on alive and awake humans. At first, the patients who volunteered for these experiments were from the army, but as less people volunteered, they began to use Chinese prisoners of war and civilian prisoners. Thousands of men and women, mostly Chinese prisoners, were forced to undergo these dissections, and whilst alive had organs removed after they had become infected with deadly diseases. Some had limbs amputated and reattached on the other side of their bodies, and when a prisoner was deemed to have been of use, they were killed with a lethal injection or were shot. Unit 731 also focused on weapons tests, analysing the effectiveness of guns, grenades and other firearms and projectiles on humans at different distances. They even tested flamethrowers on humans, but one of the overall goals of the unit's research was to develop biological weapons of mass destruction. It's believed that there were plans to use these against the Chinese and Americans and Soviets. On October 4th, 1940, Japanese bombers dropped casings loaded with 30,000 fleas infected with the plague on a Chinese village. When the bombs fell, a reddish dust settled on surfaces and bites affected everyone. More than 2,000 civilians died from the plague, and another 1,000 died from plague passing to others. They also used anthrax in these areas too. Unit 731 was disbanded after the Japanese surrender, and its records were mostly destroyed and the researchers returned to civilian life. However, there was a case in which American prisoners of war ended up inside the research laboratories of Unit 731, and predictably what those men had to go through was disturbing and sadistic. In early May 1945, a US B-29 SuperFortress crashed into northern Kyushu Island after it being rammed by a Japanese fighter plane. The US aircraft was part of the 29th Bomb Group, 6th Bomb Squadron, and had been flying to its base in Guam following committing a bombing raid on a Japanese airfield. On board the SuperFortress were 12 crew members, all of them parachuted out of the aircraft. One of them died when the cord of his parachute was sliced by a Japanese plane as he fell from the aircraft. When landing, one of the airmen opened up his machine gun on villagers and then, to avoid capture, shot himself. The locals hated B-29 crews because of their bombing of targets, which resulted in the deaths of many civilians. They captured 2 of the men on the ground and killed them, and the remaining airmen were then captured by police and were then placed under military custody. The squadron's commander, Marvin Watkins, was then transferred to Tokyo for questioning. During this interrogation, he was tortured brutally and was beaten to within an inch of his life for information. The other prisoners were told that they were going to be transferred to hospital to be treated for their injuries, However, what happened next was covered up for a long time. Over the next 3 weeks, the men of the SuperFortress were transferred across to the human experimentation element of the Japanese Army, Unit 731. They were subjected to horrific pathological experiments that the research group became infamous for. One of the researchers who worked there and witnessed it stated, "One day 2 blindfolded prisoners were brought to the school in a truck and taken to the pathology lab. 2 soldiers stood guard outside the room. I did wonder if something unpleasant was going to happen to them, but I had no idea it was going to be that awful." According to statements that was later used in trials against some of the doctors and military personnel involved, one of the American prisoners was given an anaesthetic. He was then injected with seawater to see if it worked as a replacement for sterile saline solution. The other airmen transferred to the unit were subjected to horrific experiments. One had parts of their organs removed, with one having an entire lung removed to see the effects of surgery on the respiratory system. In another experiment, the doctors drilled through the skull of a live prisoner to see if epilepsy could be treated by removing part of the brain. It was even accused that the Japanese researchers removed the liver of one American prisoner, cooked it, and served it to officers, but this was never proven. The crimes of Unit 731 went largely unpunished by the Allies at the end of the Second World War. Many things were covered up, and in a secret deal, the post-war administration gave many of those who worked in the research group immunity from prosecution in return for details about the experiments. The horrors of the unit have gone down in history as one of the most barbaric elements of the Second World War. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.